Hello there and welcome. This is Mikhail or Michael speaking, and before I start this video, I want to say thank you all who decided to support me financially, be it through Patreon, PayPal or Super Thanks. I really appreciate your generosity, so thank you friends and have a blessed day. Now today's video I will start with Bakhmut section, and to be more specific, situation that is currently developing within and around village of Ivanivske. All throughout last 24 hours, Russian forces continued their offensive operations within and around the village itself, with an attempt to take control over the settlement. And as a result of successful storming operations, Russian forces were able to yet again advance not only within the village itself, but also in the open fields to the south of it. Here you can see exactly how much territories that was. Now, as you can see, Russians were able to reach the center street of the village, called Tereshkova Street, and capture a portion of it, with a farm and a warehouse adjacent to it as well, which, as you can see, Russians take full control of as well. You can also notice that Russians also took control over this small forested area, which will allow them to attack in the direction of these warehouses here. With it, Russian forces will be able to bypass series of Ukrainian fortifications located in the densely builded portion of Ivanivske, and in case of Russians capturing the warehouses, they will acquire an important stronghold, which will not only give them ability to attack to the south along these paved roads, clearing these sections of the front, but also attack in the direction of this street and this one as well, effectively cutting off this portion of the village, leaving only this road for Ukrainian supply. But as you can see, this road is already in close vicinity of Russian attacks and is barely usable for supply efforts. At this point in time, Russians control about 50% of the village, but their offensive continue as I speak. In the background, Russians continue to shell Chasiv Yar extremely heavily, as you can see here on this video. All this is in obvious attempt to disturb Ukrainian supplies that are currently focused in Chasiv Yar and then sent to Ukrainian formations fighting not only in Ivanivske but generally all across Bakhmut fronts. And of course, this greatly hinders Ukrainian defensive capabilities. From Bakhmut, let's quickly discuss situation in Siversk frontline, or to be more specific, near the town of Belogorovka, where in the last 24 hours Russians conducted multiple offensive operations in the direction of this small village, as well as from filtration center here in the direction of this mountain, and in general attempt to increase the buffer zone around this stronghold. Ukrainians mirrored Russian attacks with counterattacks of their own and were able to stop Russians in front of Belogorovka. However, the same cannot be said about Russian attacks in the direction of the mountain. As a result of offensive efforts, Russians captured this portion of the front, getting closer and closer to the mountain itself. At this point in time, Russians are using the filtration center as a staging point for all of their attacks on this front. But again, so far, the fighting here is mostly of positional style of warfare, and those small territorial changes is a good example of that. Then from here, let's move all the way to Avdiivka and discuss situation here. First, let's discuss what is happening around village of Tonenke. There were little to no territorial changes within the last few days due to the fact that Ukrainians threw a lot of reinforcements and launched multiple counterattacks. So far, it seems Russians were able to repel all of them, but let's start with Tonenke. As you can see, Ukrainians are now mostly holding within the northern portion of the village, with Russians controlling southeastern portion, and here on this video you can see Russians putting up a flag somewhere in this part of the village. Here Ukrainians attempted to launch several counterattacks in attempt to recapture the village completely. However, they were unable to do so. Russian forces quickly spotted them and unleashed hellfire on their heads. Here you can see example of that on your screens. This is a work of Grad system, which stopped Ukrainian attack in its tracks. Generally speaking, the situation is somewhat similar as in Tonenke all across the fronts. Same could be said about Orlivka, where Ukrainians do launch occasional counterattacks in attempt to recapture the village, as well as in Berdychi. But so far, like I said previously in the video, Russian resilience and counterattacks did not allow Ukrainians to advance. One of the reasons why Ukrainian counterattacks here were so ineffective is, like you might have guessed, loss of Avdiivka. Unlike Russians, who are able to concentrate their troops within in Avdiivka and conceal them along the buildings and rubble, as you can see here, Ukrainians do not have that ability. All the villages and towns in this area that are under Ukrainian control are small, And when they do accumulate some troops, Russians immediately spot them and destroy them with aviation bombs and artillery systems, like again on this video here. As fighting continues, Russian drones became extremely active, and they greatly outnumber Ukrainian ones. Generally speaking, on this front we see Russian superiority in everything, be it troops, aviation, artillery, drones, and even supply. And of course Avdiivka is an important part of it. Having a big fortified town in your rear is extremely important for advancing efforts. That's why when Ukrainians held Avdiivka, Russians were at a disadvantage, and now when Russians are holding Avdiivka, Ukrainians are. Again, I'm trying to say this to those who still believe that the loss of Avdiivka held no significance at all. From Avdiivka, let's visit situation around Marinka and discuss Russian offensive efforts in the general direction of Georgievka. Here, all throughout the last 24 hours, Russians attacked all across the front, around this pond, as well as across the open fields, and as a result of that, Russian forces were able to advance within Georgievka, capture important trench that was located here, and gained those territories in the process. As you can see, satellite image already shows some fortifications here in this area, which are quite old, and it seems Ukrainians were able to construct newer ones along this road, which Russians recently captured. As Russians fought in this area, they continually striked upon Ukrainian formations not only in Georgievka but also in Maximilianivka, as this is the village which Ukrainians are used to accumulate and send reinforcements to the fighting in Georgievka village itself. And here on this video you can see a result of Russians finding and destroying Ukrainian ammo depot. Generally speaking, it seems that the intensity of fighting here in this village is increasing and increasing as days go by, because Russians are getting closer and closer to the center of the village. Of course, Ukrainians are doing everything in their power to stop Russians, throwing fresh reinforcements and occasionally go on counterattacks, but as you can see, it doesn't stop the Russians as they slowly advance within the village itself. With this I end today's video. Hopefully it was to your liking and was informative enough. If it was, please consider supporting it by a like, comment, and of course, if you haven't subscribed, a subscription. These actions not only help this channel's growth, but also helps spread the truth, so it's very important. Thank you in advance. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a good day, and always remember, Russia will be free and great.